Okay, and we are live. Hi, I'm Sharon Weiss-Greenberg. I'm here as the Executive Director of JOFA, and I'm really excited to have Rabbanit Devorah Evron. Rabbanit Devorah Evron and I go way back, and I've had the privilege to learn from her in a variety of settings, and I'm so excited that she's here. And Rabbanit Devorah Evron recently joined Orator Stone, the Susie Bradfield Women's Institute of Halachic Leadership. And your position, what is your
I'm the director
of the program. I don't know if what the specific title is, but she's doing incredible work, and she has a beautiful way of teaching and inspiring people, and I'm so excited to have you here, and I'm just going to let you take it away.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you for having me on your webinar series for Elul and the Chagim. I recently joined the Susie Bradfield Women's Institute for Halachic Leadership as director of the Institute, together with Rabbi Shmuel Klitzner. The head of the Institute is Rabbi Shukir Reich, and it is in Or Torah in Midrashet Lindenbaum in Jerusalem. It's 3 o'clock in the morning here in Israel, and it's a great time to study Torah. It's always a great time to study Torah, and I thought that we'd go into a story in the Gemara and the Talmud that has to do with Sukkot, but can also prepare us and give us something to think about before Yom Kippur. Is that okay? That's what we're gonna do, okay? So the Talmud in Masechet Sukkot talks about the different halachot that have to do with building a sukkah, with sitting in a sukkah, with fulfilling the obligation of the sukkah, of Sukkot. And something very interesting happens in our, when we look at Halacha. There's so many details in Halacha, so many small little things that we do. And it can give you a feeling sometimes that you're so absorbed in the details that there's a problem to see the whole picture. But on the other hand, these different details are, we can trust them. They give us a way of life. They help us understand how we want to do things, and we trust them. And we say, okay, if we follow these different details, then we'll be doing things correctly. So how do you find the balance between looking at each detail and trying to observe all the things that we know, that we accept upon ourselves to observe all the teachings that the Torah gives us on the one hand, and living day to day with all these details, and on the other hand, realizing the larger picture and not getting lost in this forest of details. So one of the ways that the Gemara, that the Talmud helps us do this and use this balance is when it brings in one sugya, on one topic, both halachic details and a halachic discussion, and an agadah, a story that tells us not only about the details and what needs to be done, but how these things were implemented in the Beit Din, in the Beit Midrash, during Talmudic times. And when we study these two things together, it helps us, on the one hand, look at these details and realize them, and on the other hand, not getting lost in the forest. And another thing it does is that it helps us really, really tone the message and really understand the values that are there at the base of all these details. So we're going to study a part in Masechet Sukkah, in the part of the Talmud that deals with Sukkah and with building a Sukkah and fulfilling the mitzvah of Sukkah. And we'll hear a story that connects to that. Okay, So in Masechet Sukkah, on Daf Lamed Aleph, page 31a, on the first side of the page, the Gemara teaches us that in the case of a stolen sukkah, if someone sits in a stolen sukkah, are they fulfilling the mitzvah of sitting in a sukkah? Now, it's a question that comes after they told us that if someone takes a stolen lulav, the arbat minim, the lulav, etrog, hadas, and arava, then they will not fulfill the mitzvah of arbat minim. So now they're asking the question, if you sit in a stolen sukkah, will you be fulfilling the mitzvah? And the Gemara tells us that it's a machloket. Rabbi Eliezer says that if someone sits in a stolen sukkah, they're not fulfilling the mitzvah of sukkah. And Chachamim, the majority of the rabbis, say that you are fulfilling the mitzvah of sukkah. Now that's really interesting, because if taking a lulav, if you steal a lulav, and you can say the bracha 700 times, you will not be fulfilling the mitzvah of lulav. But if you sit in a stolen sukkah, how is it that you're fulfilling the mitzvah of sukkah? So the way that the Gemara explains the reason that if someone comes and sits in a sukkah that's not their own, they're fulfilling the sukkah, has to do with the fact that Karka Olam, the earth itself, cannot actually be owned by a specific person. And so anywhere that you go and you sit and there is a schach above you, then you will be fulfilling the mitzvah, because it's like you're borrowing the schach from the person who built the sukkah. And it's not like taking the lulav and bringing it, like really taking it and bringing it into your hands, but it's you're walking in the street and you walk into someone's sukkah. You're allowed to go wherever you want. Your feet are allowed to walk wherever you want. You're like borrowing the schach. Rabbi Eliezer disagrees. He says, no, you're not allowed to do that, because if you sit in a borrowed sukkah, you are not fulfilling the mitzvah of sukkah. Now, let's see that they moved very quickly from a stolen sukkah, and they agree, both Rabbi Eliezer and Chachamim, that we're talking about a borrowed sukkah, that actually a person cannot steal a sukkah. Of course, if you walk into your friends, to your neighbor's house before they build the sukkah, and you take the sukkah and build it in your backyard, then that would be stealing the sukkah. But if the sukkah is built and you come and sit in the sukkah can never be stolen. You're borrowing. So the machloket between Rabbi Eliezer and Chachamim is a borrowed sukkah. Can the mitzvah be fulfilled? Rabbi Eliezer says no, and Chachamim say yes. Then Gemara goes on to say that Rabbi Eliezer and Chachamim agree, though, that if a person steals the schach from someone else and uses it to put the schach over their sukkah, what would we think? Is it stolen? Are we allowed to sit in the sukkah that we did not pay for the schach, that we did not cut the branches down by ourselves, that they're not our branches? Are we allowed to sit in a sukkah on our property, in my backyard, but I just walked over to the neighbors and cut their branches and brought their branches and put it on my sukkah. If I sit in that sukkah, will I be yotzei mitzvat leishev b'sukkah, sitting in the sukkah? Can I say the bracha and sit in the sukkah? So when I first learned that question, read that question years ago, I was sure that the answer will be no. Because if when you take a lulav from someone, you steal a lulav in your hands, you take it home and you say the bracha over it, and that's not fulfilling the mitzvah, then taking the branches from someone else and putting it over my sukkah, that would also be considered not valid. It's a stolen sukkah. But the Gemara says that Rabbi Eliezer and Chachamim agree that you can sit in a sukkah, that the schach is stolen, as long as you pay for the value of the schach. The person that you stole the schach from cannot come and demand that you take the schach down and you give it back. Now, that's very interesting, because the reason that they agree on this is that there is in Halacha a takana, a regulation. It's called takanat hashavim, the regulation for tshuva. We could call it that. It's a regulation that enables people who did wrong, who took things wrongfully, to enable them to pay back, to lehashiv, to fix what they did to a certain degree, in a way that they can do that will not hurt them too much. And I'll give you an example and explain. When you build a house, okay, and you use beams, so the Gemara says, if a person building a house stole a beam from someplace else and put it in his house and completed the house, completed the building. Now there's a stolen beam in the building. Should the building be taken down in order to give back that beam? If we tell someone this is what you have to do, they probably won't do it. So the regulation, the takana, says no, don't take down the whole house, but the person who stole the beam has to pay for the beam. He has to pay the person that he stole the beam from. Because the beam is no longer a beam, it's a part of the building. It went through a shinui, it went through a change. And because it went through this change, and we realize that in order for people to do tshuva, it has to be something that they really can do, then we have takanat hashavim, this regulation, excuse me, that enables people to pay for what they did, and without taking down this building. So the same applies to a sukkah. If you built a sukkah and you stole the schach, we don't do things like that, but let's say someone did, stole the schach, put the schach on. If we tell him to take down the schach, he probably won't do that. And so it's a win-lose situation, or even a lose-lose, because this person cannot do tshuva, and this person does not have a schach or the equivalent, the money. And so what Chazal say, what the Chachamim say, is that the person should leave the schach and pay for the schach, pay the person that he stole the schach from. And that's the halacha component of this sugya, of this topic. And the Gemara gives, this is the decree, and that's the decision. And then the Gemara goes on to tell a story, and we're going to look at this story. So the Gemara tells us, Hahi Savta, this specific Savta meaning an old woman. It's a story about an old woman. It's not a story about a woman, because if it was a story about a woman, the Gemara would say, Hahi Itita. Itita is in Aramaic a woman. But the story says, Hahi Savta, this old woman. This old woman comes into Rav Nachman's Beit Din. Rav Nachman, one of the Amoraim, one of the scholars of the Talmud, one of the great scholars of the Talmud. He lives in Babylon. He's head of a Beit Din, and he's married to our great, great friend, Yalta. Yalta is one of the women in the Talmud. She's not mentioned in this story, but she's definitely a heroine on her own, and a woman that maybe you should do a series of webinars on her and her stories in the Talmud.
I love that idea.
Yeah. So Rav Nachman is married to her, and Yalta is the daughter of the head of the Gola. The head of the Gola is a political position. He's the Babylonians gave quite a lot of autonomy to the Jewish community and population, and the head of all of this autonomy, Rosh HaGola, the head of the Gola, and she, Yalta, is his daughter, and Rav Nachman is his son-in-law. Rav Nachman is the Av Beit Din, the head authority in the Beit Din. And this old woman, this Savta, walks into the Beit Din and demands justice. She says to Rav Nachman, the head of the Gola, and all the people of his family, all the people sitting in his sukkah are sitting in a stolen sukkah. And Rav Nachman doesn't pay attention to her. And again she says, the head of the Gola and all of the house of the head of the Gola, they're all sitting in a stolen sukkah. Now the facts are not disputed. What we understand from the story is that she had schach either on her sukkah already or ready to be put on her sukkah. And someone from the house of the head of the Gola stole her schach and put it on the sukkah of the head of the Gola. And these facts are not disputed. And she comes into the Beit Din and she demands justice the way she feels justice. And Rav Nachman ignores her. He pays no attention to her. And she says again. And then she says something really, really interesting. She says to him, a woman whose father had 318 slaves cries out to you and you take no notice? What does she mean when she says a woman whose father had 318 slaves cries out to you and you take no notice? So either we can think that this is a woman who grew up in a very rich family and probably had a lot of hardships during her life and lost all the things that she had. And all she had at the end was this schach. And she comes to him and she says to him, this is injustice, not only because you or your father-in-law stole my schach, but understand, I don't have anything. I used to be very rich. I used to be very respected, but now I'm not, and I don't have anything. So remember how respected I was, If you want to ignore someone who's not respected anymore, no. But remember how respected I was, and give me back my schach. But there's a switch to it, because the Torah tells us that at a certain place in Bereshit, that Avraham Avinu had 318 slaves. So this woman is actually saying to Rav Nachman, I am the daughter of Abraham, exactly like you are the son of Abraham. So you cannot ignore a daughter of Abraham. You cannot ignore me. Now, this is really, really interesting, because we have to understand that the Talmudic scholar or scholars that put together the Talmud are telling this story and using either using or let's say using a woman, specifically the persona of a woman, of an old woman in Beit HaMidrash, and talking about Avraham Avinu in Beit HaMidrash. It's the ultimate saying. What can you say when someone says, I'm the daughter of Avraham Avinu? He ignores her. And he says to Rabbanan, to all the Chachamim that are around there, I'll say it in Hebrew first, and then I'll say it in English. He says, it's actually in Aramaic. He says, Pa'itahi, hipo'ah. She's a noisy woman. She's making noises. She has nothing valid to say, because she can only claim the cost of the wood. Because we just studied in Gemara just before that all this woman can claim is the cost of the wood. She cannot ask for her schach back. Now, what is this story all about? Because when we look at it, it doesn't really add anything to the halachic decision. The halachic decision is that if someone stole the schach, then they have to pay for the schach. You don't have to take the schach down. So why do you need a story? Well, we can say that the story makes it stronger, makes the halachic decision stronger. The story says that the decision wasn't theoretical, but here's a story of something that happened in the Beit Din, and let's see how Rav Nachman made the decision. And even though it was an old woman, and even though she said that she's the daughter of Abraham, Rav Nachman didn't move right or left, and he made the decision according to Halacha. And that's okay. There are a lot of the Parshanim that agree with that and say, yes, that's the reason that the story is there. But it's very interesting to look at the story again by looking at other stories. And there's one other story where the same thing happens, that a woman screams in the Beit Din. And there's another story that sounds a little bit like it. And both stories are not stories that concur with the halachic decision given in the Gemara. They are both stories that are critical of the decision and the way, and especially the way the decisions were implemented. And so it brings us back to this story, and we have to ask ourselves, how can this story be critical of the decision, the halachic decision that was made? And it's also interesting to see how women are part of a critical story of a critic. The story that says, yes, you made a halachic decision, and now let's see how that decision is implemented in each specific question, in each specific personal story. It may be that when the Talmudic scholars decided to put this story into the Gemara in this specific place, when we read it, we may ask ourselves, does Takanat HaShavim, or should Rav Nachman be using Takanat HaShavim in this specific case? When the person that stole this chach is strong, is the main force in the community, is the decision maker, is the person that's supposed to be looking out for everyone. When he's the robber and she is Hahi Savta, this old woman who comes by herself to the Beit Din. So there's no man in the picture, no husband, no son, no brother, no grandson. No, she comes by herself into the Beit Din. And she's being ignored. And Rav Nachman is saying she's pa'ita. Should she be treated that way? First of all, should she be treated that way in general in the Beit Din? Even if he says to her, listen, I thought about it and there's nothing to do and they're just going to pay you and that's it. But should the head of the Golah be entitled to use Takanat HaShavim when you're the strong person? Is Takanat HaShavim meant for you? When you're supposed to be the one taking care of someone else, how can you be the one stealing from someone else? And maybe there's criticism of Rav Nachman and telling Rav Nachman, you are the person, you are the person that is supposed to be for this old woman. Yes, you are the son-in-law of the head of the Golah. But because your word is revered by everyone, and everyone looks up to you, and Rav Nachman was everyone studied from him. And there are more people in the Beit Din because the story tells us that he turns to them. Then maybe your decision in this case should be different. Maybe in this case, you should say, yes, we have this regulation, we have Takanat HaShavim. But if I use Takanat HaShavim now, by the time they pay her, and by the time she goes out and gets schach, Sukkot will be over. Now there's another twist. She's not obligated for Sukkah, right? Sukkah is a mitzvah shazman grama. It's a mitzvah that has to do with time, and women are not obligated to sit in the Sukkah. But that's the why this story is so brilliant, because the Talmudic scholar that is telling this story is saying, yes, she's not obligated, it's reshut. And yes, there is this regulation that will enable the head of the Golah only to pay her. But we expect Rav Nachman, A, to treat her differently in the Beit Din, and B, to realize that all these halachic details, as important as they are secondary to taking care of this old woman who's alone, who either lost everything or all she can say is, I'm related to Abraham. She has no yichus. She's related to Evron, which is a huge yichus, but she's not from an important family. And Rav Nachman needs to take care of her. And that brings us, and this is, I think we have time for a little more to touch this. Yeah, we do, to Yom Kippur? Okay. So
we're to lay on the guilt.
What?
I said we're to lay on the guilt there.
Okay, so we're gonna we're gonna learn from this. We're gonna learn from this. Okay. First of all, we're gonna invite people to our sukkah, as we always do. But there's the famous saying that everyone knows, that mitzvot sheben adam lamakom, or averot sheben adam lamakom, the averot that we do vis-a-vis HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If we didn't daven when we should have, or kashrut, or whatever, averot sheben adam lamakom, Yom Kippur mechaper. If you do tshuva, you realize what you did wrong, and you regret it, and you accept that you want to do differently in the future, then Yom Kippur will atone for mitzvot sheben adam lamakom. Meaning that you go through Yom Kippur, and you went through this whole process, and there is tshuva there. And it's a clean slate, and you start again. But averot sheben adam lechavero, the averot, the things that you do wrongfully to your friends, to other people, and Yom Kippurim mechaper, Yom Kippur will not atone for it, even if you regret it, ad sheyafayes et chavero, until you come and you talk to your friend, and you ask for forgiveness, and you fix what needs to be fixed between you and other people. Now, Rav Ovadia Yosef brings in one of his shutim, in one of his responsa, called Yechaveh Dat. He brings something that Rav Yoshiyahu Pinto wrote. This is a Sephardi rabbi that Rav Ovadia Yosef quotes. And he quotes this, and I'll read it in Hebrew. It's very short, and then I'll explain it in English. And he says, Im lo piyes et chavero, gam ha'averot sheben adam lamakom en Yom Kippurim mechaper. It says, if a person does not ask forgiveness from his friend, from other people, if you do not take care of the averot that you did towards other people, then Yom Kippur will not atone even for the averot that a person did towards the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Meaning that the main thing in Torah, and this is what Rav Yoshiyahu Pinto teaches us, and Rav Ovadia Yosef decides to say more and to teach us more, because more people listened to Rav Ovadia Yosef, or heard from him. If we need to realize that the essence, the center of Torah, of Judaism, of Yahadut, what Hashem wants from us is that we put Ben Adam Lechavero in the middle. And that even if, as we saw in the story, that you can be Yotzei Ben Adam Lamakom, you can sit in the sukkah and it'll be fine. You'll be fulfilling the Ben Adam Lamakom towards the Kadosh Baruch Hu. You'll be sitting in a kosher sukkah, in a sukkah that you're allowed to sit in. But if by doing that, you will be doing an Aveira of Ben Adam Lechavero, of a person to another person, then the mitzvah of Ben Adam Lamakom towards the Kadosh Baruch Hu cannot be fulfilled. So when Yom Kippur comes around, and we need to think of what is really, really important, then when they open the Aron Kodesh and we look at the Sefer Torah and there's this a lot of ruach of Ben Adam Lamakom, at that moment, look around the shul, look around the Bet Knesset, and understand that in order to connect to what goes on in the tefillah and towards Hashem, to do that, we need first to be connected this way. And to look at different people. So if we need to stay home because we have a grandmother that needs us to stay with her, or if we have to come to shul a little later because we're slowly walking with a number of kids, or if we have to stand because we're giving someone else a seat, or if we stand in tefillah and we look at someone and we realize that she doesn't look so well, maybe we should ask her how she's feeling. But we usually don't talk between Kriyat Shema and Tfilat Amidah. These are things that we need to pay attention to. And I think that this is what Rav Ovadia Yosef is saying, what Rav Yoshia Pinto is saying. I think this is something that we can learn from this, the Gemara and the Talmud. And I think this is something that we should be taking with us towards Yom Kippur. And when it's in Yom Kippur, it's Yom Hadin, and we can take it towards Sukkot. Sukkot v'samachta v'chagecha. It's a joyful time. It's a happy time. And the Rambam says that samachta v'chagecha is when you bring people that don't have where to sit into your sukkah. You bring guests into your sukkah. And when everyone sits together, then you're fulfilling the samachta b'chagecha towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu, towards Hashem. So may we all have, Be'ezrat Hashem, a Gemar Chatima Tova. This should be a good year, a good year. Today in Israel, we had a very sad day. 3 young men that were killed, and it was a very, very sad day. And we all hope that this next year and the future will be a future of Ben Adam L'Chavero in Israel and all over the world. B'ezrat Hashem.
Amen. Thank you so much. Also, what I love on top of what you said is that in today's world, I think we're beyond hesitant to think of our leaders as anything but faultless. And here's the strong message of the higher standard that we really should be all held accountable to, no matter who you are. So I just find that especially powerful. Thank you. I apologize for the technical difficulties. Rabbanit Devorah, where are you going to be on October 18th?
I will be at the Jofa conference, the Kolech conference in Jerusalem. I'll be speaking in the morning about halachic leadership, women and halachic leadership. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I always love the Kolech conventions.
I will be there too, and I look forward to speaking as well about women in halachic leadership, primarily what's going on in America, and seeing over 70 faces who will be teaching Torah in beautiful ways. And I hope that whoever can be there will be there. If you live in Israel, come. If you don't, maybe make the trip.
Yeah, well, it'll be great to see everyone. Some people come for the Chagim and stay a little bit. It's a week after Sukkot, and it's a lot of fun for young people, for all ages. If you're at a gap year, it's a great experience.
Amazing. Thank you so much. If you've missed our earlier shiurim that are part of this series, please visit our YouTube channel and check them out. There's one more to go. If you would like to sign up to be informed about future webinars, please email rivka@jofa.org. Follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, follow our website, Live Love Jofa. Our handle is @jofa.org. Thank you again, Rabbanit Devorah. I'm Sharon Weiss Greenberg. Gamar Tov.
Gamar Tov.